Welcome back, guys. Amar here from Magic Coding, and in this video we're going to talk a bit about functions. So as a definition, what are they? Well, a function is a way of packaging code, and then we can use that code throughout our whole script. So for example, I can create a function which is created by typing in void, so like void start, void update, and then you type in the name. For example, we're gonna have movement, open close parentheses, and then curly brackets. And then here we're gonna put some block of code. So let me add just 2 slashes. Here we can put some block of code, so block of code that we can use, for example, an update function where we're gonna have our movement. Then also what the function is used for is to clean up things. So for example, here you can see movement, you can see jump. Like to call out a function, you just type in the function name, open close parentheses, and semicolon. Now I'm going to talk a bit about this, but let's first explain what is a function. We can call out here movement, then here we can call out maybe jump, but that will be in the movement. We can call out shoot. So for example, if you want this to be shoot, and we don't need to have that block of code inside here, that doesn't look very pretty, but you can type in the movement, and then if you want to see how the movement was done, you go and check that block of code. So as I said, it's just a way like of packaging code that does something, and then we can reuse it whenever we want. You can even create a function of some sort that you can repeat it over and over again. For example, we can have our function score that we're gonna have in our games, which will increase the integer score. That will increase the integer score, and then we're gonna store it somewhere there where we're gonna show the score for our player. But in this video, what I prepared was a void. We have 4 type of functions. One is void calculate to numbers. So this will be our one function. Here we're gonna just type in print. We're gonna print the sum of numbers, or sum of A and B is, and for example, we're gonna add here plus sum and add the semicolon. And here we're gonna add integer sum, which will be equal to 4 plus 5. I don't know, semicolon. Now I can copy this, as you saw before, and call it out in the start function and adding the semicolon at the end. Now if I go, it's gonna do the exact same thing. So if I go here, click play, and you're gonna see here the sum of A and B is 9. And if I click on it, it's gonna point me right here. Now, of course, you can say that is just one line of code, basically 2 lines of code where you can add them just in start. But for example, let's see, I can just copy this one and then paste it like multiple times, like 4 times, even though it doesn't make any sense because it's always going to be the same exact number. But you got my point. I can copy just this and I can repeat this 4 times, except and don't add it like this. Like imagine if you add it like this. This just doesn't look pretty. This is gonna work, but this just doesn't look pretty. And it's not gonna work with it when the integer inside like a sum. It's not gonna work. That's the other reason. Also, this is a void function. A void function means it does not return anything. Now you may ask me what for example, can we change the numbers but from inside here, so we don't have to go and change them every time into the integer sum, but when we call them to change them. We can do that, and that will be using arguments. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to leave this example over here. And by adding arguments, all you got to do is go into the curly brackets and type in here any variable that you want. This can be an integer, this can be a string, this can be a boolean, this can be a game object that you're going to see later on in development phase. So we can have int A and int B. And then we can say the integer sum equals to A plus B, and here we can change the number. So for example, here we're saying that this integer A and we're creating integer B, and here we're saying that this A plus this B equals to this sum, and here we can add our A and B. So for example, I can add 5 and 6 for example. Now I can copy this and I can do some other numbers. So for example, 11 plus 6, I can do 3 plus 4, I don't know. And if I go back, click play, we're gonna see multiple, or actually 3 printed out. One is 11, one is 17, and one is 7. If I click on them, boom, it's gonna pass me right onto this one over here. So this is the other type of function. One is just a function which is used like this, and the other one has arguments. And then we're using those arguments to see if it's good, if it's bad, or whatnot. Also, we can use a boolean, so boolean g, as I said, for example, and then you can check if this g is true, then you're going to do something else, and so on and so forth. Now these, as I said, are functions that return something. So if I take this, put it here, I can create a function that doesn't return anything. You can even call it a bit complex variable. So this can be an integer, for example, calculate two numbers, open close parentheses, and then semicolon, curly brackets. So because this is an integer, this needs to return an integer, because this is not an integer over here. We have nothing. Even though if I type in sum equals to 3 plus 5, nothing, we are returning nothing, so this will not work. So what we need to do is we need to type in here return, and we need to return some integer. If I return just 2, this is gonna work, but we're gonna return 2 plus 7, for example. And we can use this as an integer, because if I call out calculate two numbers, put it here, nothing will happen, because this will read, let me just clear, this will read it just as an integer. Boom, nothing's happening. But if I type in print, and I'm just gonna copy this for the sake of this video, copy paste and add a semicolon, and I can remove this here. If I just added a print calculate two numbers, I can go back, click play, and you're gonna see that we're gonna have 9, which is over here, calculate two numbers. So as I said, you can even see this as a bit more complicated number. Now, of course, this can be also boolean, can be a string, can be any type of variable that you want. Also, you may ask, can we do the exact same thing with this one? So can we add, or actually just let me just do this, bam, bam. Can we add arguments to our calculate two numbers? Of course we can. I can do int a, int b, the same exact way I did it here. So return a plus b, and here I can go ahead and say 15 and comma 11. One more thing I forgot to mention is you need to separate this with only one comma. You can even have one integer. It's not the requirement to have 2, but if you want to add more, you have to add comma in between. That's something I did not mention, but it is here shown. Hopefully you spot it with your little hawk eye. So if I click play, boom, 26, same exact thing. Now the last thing I want to talk about is the naming of the functions. Now here we have different names for the the same name for the function, calculate two numbers, calculate two numbers, calculate two numbers. This all fine, and if I remove it, we're gonna see some errors. So right now, if I remove it, we're gonna see some errors, because we cannot have the same name for everything, and I misspelled it somewhere, and boom, we have right now problems. Now it's showing us a problem with only these two and not with these two, because these are on top of these. But what I want to talk about is you can have the same name as long as you don't have the same arguments. So this here doesn't have arguments, and here we have arguments, and these do not have any problems. Even though there are two voids, that doesn't matter. It's not because this is an integer. If I had here int a only, boom, error is gone. If I add here int c, boom, this is gone. As long as you have the same name, you need to have a different argument, so you can call it out. And right now, if I type in calculate two numbers, if I don't type anything here, we're gonna call out this function. If I type in here maybe just if I type in 1 and 2, I'm gonna call this function, as you can see, reference 1. If I call out 1, 2, 3, I'm gonna call out this function over here. If I call just 1, then I'm calling this function over here. So as you can see, when you're using the same exact name for the function, you need to have different kind of arguments. So yeah guys, that will be basically it for the functions. The last thing I want to mention is the start function and update function are functions that are inside of the Unity and manual behavior, and we're going to talk that about later on. Right now, We're just going to focus onto the functions that we can make. And yeah, that will be it. So I will see you guys in the next video.